But for us, we're going to be looking at a particular example of recreating Randy Lewis's snake and hose composite image. So he's combined two images together, the image of a hose and a snake, and then he's added a color background. Now I did a search for a green hose reel, and I think I actually found his reference image, which is kind of cool. It's low res, but it'll work for this purpose. So the first step is to obviously have your images ready to go. So one thing that I noticed that's super important that students don't do is that they don't actually know how to search up. So how you search up an image is really important. So in this case, I know I want a green snake, and I know that's a pretty simple search term. So this is a nice, easy one. Green snake. However, I need the file size to be quite large. So along this tab here, we can use the tools function. And annoyingly, you can't really see it in this format, but there's a size tab. And if we filter that to be the largest file size, then it gives us high res options here. So we can flick through and find one that we like. This one looks like it might be in the same direction as the hose here. So this could be an easy choice for me. So if I click on this image, I can see here it says 1200 by 1200, which is great. Now, if I was to just save that image, this is not the high res file. So I actually need to open up the image in a new tab, and this should be the largest version of the file. So again, 2-finger click, save image as, and save this somewhere where you're going to be able to locate it. I don't mind if it's just in my downloads, and I'll just title it Green Snake. So I've got that there, and do the same here, save image as, save this as my green hose. Okay, so now I should have my two files here ready to go. Okay, once you have your files, we can jump into Photoshop and create a new file. So file, new, and we are going to print these photos out. So it's important that we use the print function. So up the very top here, we go print. We can view all presets. I like to work in A3 because it's a decent file size for printing. So if you're thinking that you want to work in portrait, then here's where you can choose portrait or landscape, and we can toggle it that way. For this composition, I'm actually going to change it to be, might just keep the height and the width the same. Height and the width the same. So 297 by 297. That gives us a good amount of size to work with, and that way it'll just be square. We can change the background color if we want. I'm just going to leave it as is for now. So create, and this is our blank canvas. So we need to drop in our pictures. So the best way to do that, to ensure that our images are high res, is to go File, Place Embedded, and we can hold Shift. Is it going to let me do two at once? Okay, maybe not. I might have to do it individually. That's okay. So place the hose, drag it up to be centered. That looks fine. Hit Enter. File, Place Embedded, and find my green snake picture. And that is okay there for now. Hit Enter, and there we go. So we've got our two image files here. Now, if you zoom in on your layer, you'll see this little icon that has popped up. This icon means we can't edit things easily, so we have to 2-finger click. Hang on, I'll just get out of it. Or right click. Is it going to let me do it? Hang on a second. Okay, so right click on the name or 2-finger click on the name and rasterize. What happens when you click rasterize is that little icon disappears. So let's look at that again. So right click, so again, let me do it. And rasterize, so it disappears from that setting. Okay, so in Photoshop, layers are super important. If you can't see your layers, that's going to be a problem. So we need to make sure that we have our window, workspace, and I just always reset the essentials every time I work. If yours is still not showing up, you can simply just tick it here. Another helpful option is the history tab, so you can actually see all the things that you've been doing, and we can move these around and put them wherever we want. And we can make this longer. So just some things for you to consider. So now we've got our two images. Okay, and in our layers, we can toggle the view to be on or off. It just means that we can see underneath the layers. So I can turn off the snake layer, okay, so that I can see through to the hose layer. Or what I can do is I can select the snake and drop down the opacity so that it's quite see-through. And this is quite handy because from here we can place the actual snake's head here. So we're looking at the placement of that, and I'm thinking here might work pretty well. Not really liking how the snake is sort of looking downwards, so I might hit Control T and rotate that around so that it's a little bit more in line with the actual direction of the hose here. Once you're happy with the placement of your object, hit Enter, and then we can start to do the fun stuff. So let's zoom out of there. Whoops, hang on a sec. Okay, cool. So we want to start removing some of the background on the snake layer. So we just want to see the green hose pretty much behind it. My favorite tool to use is the quick selection tool. Yours might look like these icons. If you're ever not sure where a tool is, you can, I'm trying to zoom in for you guys so you can see, but there's this little arrow down the bottom right corner. So we can two-finger click and change that tool. So quick selection is my favorite, but you can play around with what works for you. So on the green snake layer, I'm going to select the parts that I do not want. So I don't need any of that part of the picture. I do want to keep the head, and it's just gotten rid of the head. So I'm going to hold Option key and minus that selection away. And let go, and plus this branch, plus all that, and hit delete. Now that has left me with this. So all my little running ants are there, which shows my previous selection, but I'm going to two-finger click and deselect and bring that opacity way back up so I can see what I'm working with here. Okay, so I don't really need this part of the snake, so I can select that and delete it, and I've got little bits here that I don't really need. This is where it's really good to zoom right in. I'll hold Option to minus this section away. So the quality of your work is really going to come down to this precision and getting right up close into these details. So minus that, it's just grabbed all the areas of like color and come back in, reselect that green part of the snake, and then hit delete and deselect the running ants. Now, annoyingly, I've got these little outlines on the actual snake where the parts were that we selected. So I can use, I'm looking for my eraser tool. We can simply just click and drag over these. Now, you don't have to spend a long time doing this, but you do need to get pretty close. So just running around. And notice that when I'm erasing, I'm not actually erasing the hose layer because I don't have it selected. So like I was saying, layers are very important. And I can actually see the border of this image. So I'm just going to go around and tidy that up. And that is looking pretty good. Okay, cool. So at the moment, not looking great, but that's because we haven't got to the fun stuff yet. So in the artwork example, this gold rectangular piece of the hose didn't actually exist. And the reason why that might have chosen to do that is to make the transition between the actual body of the snake and the hose a little more seamless, because it's an organic shape. So we're going to turn the snake layer off and actually just remove or clone this hose in here. So how do we do that? Well, let's have a little look at my favorite clone stamp tool. So what this tool does is, it's not letting me select anything because I've got the wrong layer selected. So it's quite helpful. So I need to have the hose layer selected because that's what I'm trying to target. And I'm increasing my brush size using the square bracket tool. So increase, decrease. And you can see the number changing up here. You can also control that setting up here by clicking and dragging. So yeah, that's fine. So in order to use this clone tool, we need to select an area that we want to copy and essentially paste. So we have to hold the Option key and you'll get this little target symbol. So if I hold that down, I'm saying, and I click, I'm saying I want to clone this part. So I've clicked it and you can see that the clone area starts to show up. Now it's not super effective all the time, but it does work in areas like here, for example. Let's say if I wanted to shorten or remove this gold piece, I can clone this section here and simply drag it along and make it disappear. So I can give the effect that it wasn't there in the first place, and I can just clone this white floor here, and again clone this this reflection on the hose. I might use one from above so that it looks a little more realistic, because it has all the correct sort of lighting. And do the same here. Just run that around. So we are really just faking this. It's an exercise of looking at light and shadow and replicating that. So you can get pretty detailed with it. And this will mean the difference between your works looking really, really seamless and a little bit blur. So I'm thinking that that's looking okay. I could tidy this up even more if I really want that, that crisp black shadow there. Okay. I'm not too worried about this blurry area because I'm thinking that I might have the snake's head in front of that, but time will tell. So that's looking pretty good. So you wouldn't even really know that that wasn't there before. So that's looking fantastic. Looking at my image though, the snake unfortunately isn't covering that area, so I'm going to have to do a little bit of work here to make it appear as though that hose is actually there. So I might need a much smaller brush so that I can create like a curve effect here. So if I copy that and I lift it up slightly, it might look a bit more realistic. So it's not great, but if you looked at that from far away, you wouldn't really be able to tell. So you can spend a bit more time than I am doing this. But that's okay. Like this, you know, from far away, that looks pretty decent. So I'm quite happy with that. So the next step is looking at the actual snake itself and doing some things here to connect the actual snake with the hose. So a couple of things we need to do is change the scale. So Command T, we can increase the size, or I guess like the width of the actual snake itself so that it looks more in line with the hose, but I think that might have been actually a little too big. So it's just literally a case of trial and error. The thing that's really bugging me at the moment is actually the color of the snake, because it's quite yellow in comparison to the hose. So we can make some color adjustments. Oh, I have to hit enter. So with our snake layer selected, we go to Image, Adjustments, Hue/Saturation. Now this will allow us to muck around with the hues a little bit, okay? So that's one option you could try, which is looking okay. So you can do it that way. Or you could also go Image, Adjustments, Hue/Saturation, and tick Colorize and toggle this in accordance. You can up the saturation, up the lightness. I tend to find that this looks a little bit fake though, so it just depends on what you're actually trying to create. So I'll cancel that for now and I'll leave this as it is. Cool. So there's lots you can do in terms of saving, you know, parts of that snake image before and, you know, copying and pasting it over here, which we could do now. So if I want to keep this you know, snake skin texture all the way along this hose, I can do some cloning on that. So hold Option key and clone that texture and try to blend it a little into the actual hose. And it works well because this texture, you know, this hose is a little textured too. Yeah, so we can play around with fill and, you know, I guess like how clear it is by selecting sections of the snake so that it blends really nicely into the color of that hose. So we can, oops, selecting the whole thing, that's annoying. We might have to do that another way. So we can select areas here and we might try using the eraser instead. So with the eraser tool, if I just started erasing, it would delete everything. So we can change the strength of that rubber up here in the opacity section. So I can erase sections from maybe just the end here. So it looks like it's almost blending in, you know, to a certain extent. So it's just a nice subtle way of blending those two colors together. Deselect. Now when we get to here, what looks strange now is the fact that this hose is sitting on something and there's a dark black shadow, whereas for the snake there's no shadow. So we're going to have to create that ourselves, and how we might do that is simply by creating a new layer. So just 2-finger click, new layer. Yeah, that's fine. Everything that you do, you want to create a new layer for, because we don't want to start drawing on this snake and then make a mistake and we can't actually remove it. So I'm just going to create a new layer and call it shadow. And to make sure that this color is, this shadow color is perfect, and the same with the hose, I'm going to use an eyedropper tool. And that allows me to select an exact color here that I can actually draw using the paintbrush tool, draw in with. So that's what we're going to do. So is it going to work for me? Let's see. Can't see anything, and it's probably because the shadow layer is underneath the hose layer. So there we go. So this is why layers are super important. Okay, so I'm just going to draw under here. I've got a soft flow brush on. Now this is looking a little scrappy, hand drawing it. So I'm going to delete that. And instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the green snake layer. And all I did was select that layer, hit Control C, and I'm going to Control V that layer into my, hang on. I want to Control V it into another layer. And I'm going to actually call this one Shadow. And I'll delete the other one because I decided that my hand shadowing skills are not great. So we're going to layer this this snake underneath, and it's going to be our shadow. And it works well because it's the exact same shape, obviously, as the snake itself. So what we can do is we can select that whole object, okay, which is our snake, and we can simply recolor it. So I'll get that eyedropper tool, grab that shadow color, get the paintbrush, and simply fill that in. Cool. Now we'll go back to our selection tool, and we're going to right click and feather that edge because it's quite a harsh edge now. So if we feather it, it's just going to make it a nice soft, hopefully a soft blurred edge. And I don't think that worked very well because it's grabbed something else. But let me just show you what that looks like. Deselect the little running ants and use my fandangled rubber eraser tool. And I need to bring the opacity back up to 100% because I want all this stuff gone. Whoops, too far. I'm going to get rid of the other parts of the snake that I don't want. And we can move this around too. So I'm just going to select that and hit my arrow tools. And I'm just subtly moving that shadow a little closer to where I want it, to where I think it fits in line with the actual hose there. So that's looking pretty good. This connection here is not ideal. So I am going to use my clone stamp again, clone stamp tool, and just tidy this up ever so slightly. So there you go. Now it's not perfect and the coloring could be better. However, to me, it's looking pretty good so far. The last step is to, we might play around with some background colors if you really want to get creative with your compositions. I know that the artist that we were looking at has a green background. So we can use our eyedropper tool and grab a green and literally just copy that as you see here. So that just tells us that we actually need to remove the white background from our hose. So let's grab our quick selection tool, and I can do this quickly for you guys, and delete it, deselect the running ants, go back in with this green, and there you go. We could play around with a different color, like a complementary color, for example. So if we double click this, what we can do is grab complementary color, which is orange, and try that. That might give it a nice pop. So not bad, not great. It sort of detracts from the actual snake because the orange is overpowering. So you might want to play around with some different colors, see what works. It could be that, you know, potentially, I'll just jump up here. That I want a more subtle orange, like a more pastel-y, and this could be a nice subtle border for it. Anyway, you play around with what works for you, but there you go. That's a recreation of a composite image of a hose and a snake. You could spend much more time refining this and getting the colors accurate, but for this tutorial, that has worked really well. Thanks and good luck.